Hi, my name is Adam Frederick, and I'm going to be taking a look at how urban and industrial environments can shape and inspire music, specifically the music revolution that started in Manchester in the late 1970s. Manchester was once the industrial capital of England, but by the late 70s, a lot of the industry either closed or moved away. This left Manchester with tons of abandoned factories and industrial parks, which created a very desolate, dreary, almost post-apocalyptic environment. One of the first really influential bands to come out of Manchester was Joy Division. They formed in the late 1970s at the height of the punk movement, but took the energy from punk and blended it with more complex emotions than anger in order to create what we now know as post-punk. A lot of their music really reflects where it came from because, like Manchester, it was dark, depressing, and industrial. And this is what they knew best. The guitarist once said that he didn't see a tree until he was 9 years old. So that kind of gives you an idea of what this environment, this city was like. Their sound and environment was also reflected in their album artwork, which was created by Peter Seville, a graphic designer who was also just starting out in Manchester. He was inspired by a lot of the same things. So, as you can see, this album artwork is very sterile and minimalist and industrial, which was really new to people at the time. Peter Seville, pictured on the left, Tony Wilson in the middle, a local TV celebrity. Joy Division and other emerging bands decided to form a record label called Factory Records, which is really a direct representation of where they were from and the music they were creating. Peter Seville did a lot of the graphic work and promotional material for the business that really had an industrial aesthetic also, as you can see. In 1980, the lead singer of Joy Division, Ian Curtis, committed suicide. Joy Division then changed its name to New Order, and along with the name change, their music also developed into the foundation for the modern-day electronic music movement. Their music became even more industrial, but a little more upbeat, and as their sound developed, it moved further and further towards dance music and new wave. Their album artwork was still done by Peter Seville, and it still reflected that industrial, stark atmosphere of Manchester. Another extremely influential band to emerge from this movement was the Smiths. They took what was already starting in Manchester and made music that was not only reflective of this environment, but also accessible to people far outside of the community of Manchester. They also used a lot of imagery from Manchester in their songs and album artwork. However, it was from a more humanistic standpoint, as if a person was experiencing this vast industrial landscape. Their songs, therefore, contained an atmosphere of longing and escapism. As New Order became increasingly famous, so did the dance and electronic scene. So New Order and Factory Records decided to open a nightclub that they converted an abandoned factory into this nightclub, and they called it the Hacienda. And on the interior, as you can see, it has this stark factory kind of feel, and that's because by this point, the electronic music movement became completely paired with the sort of industrial factory machine sort of atmosphere. And this gave rise to the rave scene, also known as the Manchester scene, and really gave bands like the Happy Mondays their start, because the whole notion of going to a big abandoned factory to see people on stage pressing buttons and twisting knobs was a really new and exciting concept. By the 90s, the rave scene had sort of calmed down, and musicians in Manchester had they were looking for new sounds in order to distinguish themselves from past musicians. Two of the bands that really made a name for themselves were Oasis and the Stone Roses. They became really big figureheads for the Britpop and alternative rock movements in the UK and US. and Oasis went on to sell over 70 million records. The Stone Roses began in the Manchester scene, and although they never got as famous as Oasis, they're equally as influential, and to this day they still have a large underground following. Because of this whole kind of bizarre turn of events that created this explosion of music and creativity, the whole Manchester scene has garnered a lot of media attention recently. At the height of the Manchester scene in 1990, the University of Manchester was the most sought-after place to attend college and university in the UK, and with this influx of people and partying and raving, organized crime also began to develop, which was eventually the downfall of the whole Manchester scene. In 1997, they had to close the hacienda due to violent incidents with drug dealers and organized crime, things like that. And that really brought an end to the whole Manchester music scene.